Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely break down Dr. Abdulgnee Quintina's comprehensive guide to the essential life-saving protocols of emergency medicine. If you've ever wondered how medical professionals manage to bring order to absolute chaos, well, you're in the exact right place.
Picture a trauma bay. The alarms are blaring, there are a million things going wrong all at once, and the clock is literally ticking. To bring order and save a life before time runs out, professionals don't just guess, right? They rely on a highly specific, rapid assessment algorithm. This structured, step-by-step approach is quite literally what stands between life and death.
So let's dive into our roadmap. We'll be hitting 5 logical steps: the primary survey framework, airway and breathing, circulation and disability, exposure and patient history, and finally, special populations and pitfalls.
Starting with Section 1, the primary survey framework. Treat first what kills first.
The primary survey is a rapid 2 to 5 minute assessment used in pretty much all clinical emergencies. And the crucial takeaway here is that this isn't about diagnosing everything perfectly right out of the gate. It's strictly about systematically identifying and treating immediate life threats as you find them. Your only goal is to treat first what kills first. What's really interesting is the 2025 ATLS update. We all generally know the ABCs, but there's an X placed at the very front for trauma cases now. X ABCDE. That X stands for exsanguinating hemorrhage. This means applying a tourniquet or direct pressure for catastrophic, life-threatening bleeding before you even check the patient's airway. Because think about it, if they lose all their blood, having an open airway simply won't save them.
Section 2, airway and breathing. The very first steps of survival.
Think of this as a rapid checklist. Check A, airway. Is it blocked? You've got to look, listen, and feel. Are there signs of obstruction like stridor, gurgling, or just complete silence? Since you always assume a cervical spine injury in trauma, you'd start with a basic jaw thrust. And if you still can't ventilate, you move immediately to establishing a definitive airway with endotracheal intubation. No blockages? Great. Move to B, breathing. Once that airway is open, are the lungs actually expanding and contracting? You inspect the work of breathing, you listen to bilateral breath sounds, and you monitor pulse oximetry. You're aiming for an SpO2 above 94%. If they aren't breathing adequately, you jump in with a bag valve mask. Most importantly, you rapidly treat major threats right on the spot, like doing a needle decompression for a tension pneumothorax. Moving to Section 3, circulation and disability, protecting blood flow and brain function. For circulation, you're evaluating perfusion by checking the pulse rate, skin color, and blood pressure to hunt for any signs of shock. Immediate management requires establishing 2 large-bore IV lines. And for trauma patients specifically, there's a critical protocol: early blood product transfusion using a strict 1-to-1-to-1 ratio, while deliberately limiting regular IV fluids. Next up is D, disability, which is all about checking brain function. Now, doctors don't just guess here. They rely on objective scoring. They might use the rapid AVPU method, checking if the patient is alert, responds to voice, to pain, or is unresponsive, or the more detailed Glasgow Coma scale. Alongside this, they check pupil reactivity and absolutely always test blood glucose to rule out severe hypoglycemia. Management during the disability phase is definitive and fast. The golden rule: if the Glasgow Coma scale is 8 or less, you must protect that airway. To bring down intracranial pressure, you elevate the head of the bed to 30 degrees. From there, it's about administering targeted medications to correct specific deficits, like IV dextrose for low blood sugar, benzos for seizures, or reversal agents like naloxone for opioid overdoses. On to Section 4, exposure and patient history, uncovering the full picture. Once those immediate life threats to the core systems are handled, we shift to E for exposure. Step 1 is completely exposing the patient for a full physical exam. This includes a coordinated log roll to check their back. But, and this is a massive but, you have to maintain normothermia. Trauma patients lose body heat incredibly fast, so you use warm blankets and warmed IV fluids, all while minimizing exposure time to respect the patient's dignity. With the patient stabilized, it's time to gather context using the AMPLE checklist. This gives the team the critical backstory: allergies, medications, past medical history and pregnancy status, last meal, and the events leading up to the injury. It is concise, and it gets exactly the data the team needs to move forward. It's incredibly vital to understand the difference between the primary and secondary surveys. The primary survey, which we just walked through, is an immediate treat-as-you-find-it protocol. You actually interrupt your survey the second you find a life threat. The secondary survey is a totally different beast. It's a methodical, diagnostic head-to-toe exam with imaging and labs, and it is done only after the patient is completely stabilized.
Finally, Section 5, Special Populations and Pitfalls, Navigating Those Tricky Complexities. This rigid framework does have to adapt to unique patients. For pediatrics, who have larger tongues and narrower airways, the trauma approach modifies to see ABCDE. Pregnant patients need a specific leftward tilt to relieve pressure on their major blood vessels. And the elderly, well, they might not show typical shock symptoms like a high heart rate because of the medications they take every day, which makes their presentation much more complex.
There are also some major red flags you have to watch out for. The biggest tap in the trauma bay is tunnel vision. You cannot let a highly graphic injury, like an open fracture, distract you from a silent blocked airway. Another huge pitfall is failing to reassess. After every single intervention, you have to check the patient again. And of course, never forget cervical spine protection and never miss X, controlling that catastrophic hemorrhage first.
This step-by-step approach isn't just some interesting theory. It's the universal gold standard. This precise protocol is backed and heavily endorsed by UpToDate for burns, anaphylaxis, and trauma, by the American Heart Association for all emergency patients, and by Medscape as the standard for both trauma and medical primary surveys. Ultimately, the primary survey provides vital order in the midst of pure chaos. By rigorously adhering to this framework, you treat first what kills first, intervening immediately and reassessing continuously. But the real question to leave you with today is this. If you are ever first on the scene and that clock starts ticking, will you remember your ABCs?
Thank you for watching this edition of the Emergency Medicine series. If you found this session valuable, please click the subscribe button below and turn on notifications to never miss an episode. Stay safe, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next lecture.